Welcome to Chuck Furuya Uncorked. My name is Kale. This is Chuck. We wanted to start a new podcast series. I wanted to get back into, putting out some episodes of a podcast. That's what originally we ventured out to do. And I wanted to start this new series on what?
On just how to get more knowledge.
How to learn about wine.
Yeah.
From region to region around the world, right?
Yeah, just get better with wine. So we'll start with regions and grape varieties and whatnot. And, again, let's keep it basic. You're not studying for an exam or anything. This is just for you as a bartender, you as a server, you as a person who's going to the store to buy wines.
As a wine enthusiast that just wants to drink wine, understand more about wine, and really break it down region to region. Right?
So our Chuck Furuya Uncorked will not only be about this. Yeah. This is just one facet that we want to unfold that can appeal to another segment of the market. Mm-hmm. And then we have the one with entertainers and, sommeliers and et cetera, et cetera. So just all kinds of informational tidbits that could attract different.
And I'm a big podcast guy, and that's all I listen to when I drive, and I miss putting out podcasts, so we wanted to get back to that and to also put out more content than one video a month. That's kind of the idea here. So today, this is our first episode of this series. I don't even know what we're calling this series yet, but we're going to dive into the region of Loire Valley.
Right. So what we're going to do is take the world of wines and break it down to major wine growing regions, and how can you understand it more or better? Yeah. And therefore, it will help you to go to a store or when you're in a restaurant to decide if you want this kind of wine or not.
Yeah, what you like to drink outside of just Cabernet and all that stuff, right? So why are we studying with Loire Valley?
Well,
or why are we starting with Loire Valley? Sorry.
I just thought it was a really good region to create a methodology.
That's important.
I think so. Otherwise, if you just shotgun, after a while, all your information is just going to go crazy.
So there's this whole world of wines to understand. So to have a methodology to I think it's important. Yeah.
To break it down, at least the various sub-regions, the various soils, the various grape varieties, and thereby then you can understand what's the possibilities wine-wise.
Totally. So let me go back real quick to we're going to try to put out an episode a week of this. The first episode, we're going to be introducing the region.
Right.
And then the second episode will be recapping the region.
Yeah. And so I think the whole purpose of that is we're going to talk about wines, right, as we unfold. And then the viewer, you have the opportunity to go to a store and buy these wines should you want to try them along with us.
Yeah.
And all of these wines were purchased in stores here on Oahu.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important.
Yes.
And so most people that were viewing this thing, they might not have considered any of these wines. Yeah. So this will always encourage you to try wines out of the box, and thereby also creating a different learning or experiencing opportunity.
Or most people might not even know about Loire Valley.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's start with that. What is so unique about Loire Valley? Let's start about the overall view of what makes this appellation special.
So Loire Valley is essentially, I would say, in the center part of France. It starts somewhere on the eastern side, right in the central part of France. And the river, Loire Valley River, the Loire River starts there and just winds and turns and goes. And it empties into the Atlantic Ocean, right, to the west. So that's how it works. And so this is a very important concept because, number one, historically, this is the general area where Joan of Arc did her crusades. So lots of history. This is where Cardinal Richelieu chose to have a chateau. This is where Leonardo da Vinci chose to be buried. So it's a very historic, lots of history here. And this is where the emperors and the kings and the queens and the royalty all vacationed. It's like their summer beach home, but instead it was on the Loire Valley. That's why you see so many chalets and castles and whatnot along the Loire Valley. It's called the Garden of France. Yeah. It's so beautiful. They grow all kinds of things there, and it's just
Have you been?
Yes, of course.
Beautiful?
Yes.
I was reading something online, too, that before the Palace of Versailles was built, this was the epicenter of French culture.
Absolutely. And so, okay, that's historically.
Yeah.
So, geographically and climatically, So it starts somewhere in the central part of France. So it's relatively not as cool. And as it winds and turns, it dumps into the Atlantic Ocean. So as you know, the Atlantic Ocean is very cold. It's colder than the Pacific Ocean, generally speaking, right? So the air from the Atlantic Ocean comes gusting into this
It's like
river.
it's funneling into that.
Absolutely.
valley.
Think about it. It's just clear sailing. And on a river, there's nothing blocking its path.
Yeah.
So that air is getting sucked into the warmer part of the central part of France. So this area is cool to moderate.
Acting as a natural AC.
Yeah. So it's a cool. It's considered a cooler growing area. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is that because you have the great influence of the Atlantic Ocean, which is salt water, and then you have the water coming from the east is fresh water, you have this collision of two different kinds of water and temperatures. And so this collision, that's why if you look at the Loire Valley, there's so much marine-influenced soils in the Loire Valley. You know, as you get closer to the ocean, it's more marine. And as you head east, specifically in the central vineyards, it's a collision of all these different plates, whether it's schist, sandstone, gravel. You have these collision of all these plates because it's more continental.
So very diverse.
Yes, but the majority of the Loire Valley, though, is famous for its marine-influenced soils. Okay, so therefore, you're going to have a lot of mineral-driven wines, which, as you know, is
What we like.
what I like personally, but I'm not saying everybody has to like it, but that's what makes it so unique. Okay, so that's the big picture stuff, is that it has a long history for growing grapes, specifically for the royalty. That's how prestigious the wines were deemed. And you have all these different kinds of grape varieties that you don't see in Bordeaux, Burgundy, or Champagne. And you have all different kind of foods because it's on a river that's more salty, closer to the Atlantic Ocean, more fresh water as you head more east. So you have all different kinds of seafood. And then because it's a garden of France, you have all kinds of produce that are grown and all kinds of cheeses. So you have this whole plethora of different kinds of foods to play around with, and it's perfect for this time of year, summertime. That's when we celebrate these kind of foods, right? And these kind of wines.
Here in Hawaii.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So where do we begin?
So I think that with all...
And this similar structure that we're about to unfold, we'll use from region to region.
Yes.
Correct.
So let's say the Loire Valley is if you do an outline, big letter, Loire Valley, right? Loire Valley then can be broken, in my opinion, to 4 distinct major regions. To the east, Central Vineyards.
Yeah.
Then you have Touraine, then Anjou, and then Nantes. I believe that's right. I'll have to look that up. I can't remember.
We'll recap that in episode 2.
Yeah. So, so that's the major. So from Loire Valley, you have 4 major subregions. Okay. And within each of those subregions, you have different villages or appellations within it, correct? And so that's how you study. You study Loire Valley, the 4 major regions, and then the most important villages within each of those regions, right? So that's your outline.
Yeah.
And then from there, I would understand the main soil types, and then I would understand the main grape varieties, and then some of the top producers. That's that's my outline.
Yeah.
Big to small in terms of appellations, soil types,
Producers.
grape varieties, then producers.
Okay.
And so that whether it's Austria or Germany or New Zealand, that's how I would break it down. Macro down to micro in terms of geography and the layout and geographically, and then the soils, the grape varieties, and then some of the top producers. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay, so if we start to the easternmost appellation, therefore, for all of you, then I would say in the eastern central vineyards is the appellations or the villages of Puy-Fumé, Sancerre, Cancy, spelled like Quincy, Menetou-Salon, and Roye. Okay, those are the 5 main villages of the Central Vineyards.
Yeah.
The grape varieties there. So again, the Central Vineyards soil It's a collision of plates. Schist, limestone, gravel, sandstone, sand. It just collides, all these different plates. So every village, every vineyard is going to be different mix of soils. And the main grape varieties there will be Sauvignon Blanc for white and Pinot Noir for red and rosé. So that's why one of the wines that we'll be tasting is from the village of Sancerre. And this is one of the new hotshot producers, Roger Neveu. And he's really esteemed because he has this incredible holding, a single parcel that's called Embouffants. And it's just a really interesting and I think textbook example of what Sauvignon Blanc can be. I don't know if you can say typical, but I think it's a really good example that you can measure others by. I think that's important.
So for people that are watching this or listening to this, because we will be posting this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts app, I will put the names of each of these wines in the description.
Hey, can you put it on hold right now? The thing? Cut away?
Why?
I want to look something up.
Just look it up.
I want to make sure I'm doing this in correct order because I'm getting old, you know. So anyway, continue asking me questions.
So back to you selecting these wines that we'll put the description. We'll put the names in the description. These are wines that you think that you can judge others by. You said
yes, I do,
and that's important for when we're getting to understand region to region.
I think it gives you a standard to work from. It gives you a core, a foundation. So I was right. It goes Central Vineyards, then Touraine, then Anjou, then Nantes.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I was correct because I'm getting old. You know that. Look how many times I have to look up things now, even phone numbers. It's kind of embarrassing, you know, but whatever. Okay, so we start off with the Central Vineyards, and then we're going to head west, and we're going to go to Touraine. Touraine has, you know, the most famous vineyards are about sand and limestone. There's other vineyards that have gravel, et cetera, et cetera. There's no one answer. It's just depends on how the river turns. It depends on what it uncovers, et cetera. But generally speaking, the vineyards that I like to work with tend to be more about sand and also about limestone. So the closer I find, and I don't know how true this is, but you know, the closer you are to the river itself, the more primary the soil. So the newer the soil, the fresher the soil. So that's where sand comes into play to me.
The closer you are to the river.
Right? Think about the sand just kind of like, and the farther you get away, all the topsoil erodes. It's clay on top and it erodes, and the limestone bedrock gets exposed. You know, and so that's the dynamic. To me, the limestone is capable of making trophy wine, like whoa. And then the sand is low nutrient, doesn't retain water.
Country style wine.
And more lighter, just more gentle, more civil, you know. And so it's not better or worse. And I'm just generally speaking, but
from your observation and your
that's what I like to check out. So the most famous appellation of Touraine to me is Vouvray.
Okay.
So
why is it so famous? Or what makes it so special?
Because it's world-class wine. It was one of the first world-class wines from the Loire Valley for me. I think Sancerre and Pouilly-Fumé for sure for Sauvignon Blanc. But in Touraine, I think what rings true more is Chenin Blanc. And to me, the most inspiring Chenin Blancs I've had from anywhere in the world come from Touraine and specifically Vouvray.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Chenin Blanc is capable of making noble wines in Touraine, in specifically Vouvray.
And Sauvignon Blanc is noble wines from Central Vineyards?
Yes, and when you talk about the world's finest Sauvignon Blanc, you can argue some of these other regions like New Zealand and Bordeaux and whatnot, but I mean, really, I think the Loire Valley
That's cool.
really kind of makes a statement with their Sauvignon Blancs. I'm not saying they're the best or anything like that, but they're certainly world famous for that, right? Okay, so that is...
So what is this producer's name?
Champalou.
Okay.
And I bought that at our field, Clos. We bought this one at Clos too, didn't we? One night after we filmed?
And
yes, that
this,
So
again, I will put this wine in the description. So this is...
Champalou Vouvray.
Yeah.
Okay, Then also from the Touraine area, I wanted to introduce a red wine. I could have brought one from the next Anjou area, but I thought the most famous red wine from the Loire Valley would be more of what you should taste. Okay? So I do have one from Anjou, but I think this is more classic, more statement. And that is the village of Chinon. So this is the great producer, Charles Joguet, and it's in the village of Chinon. The three most famous villages in this general area is Chinon and Bourgogne and St. Nicholas de Bourgogne. So they're famous for Cabernet Franc. And so you can have all different kinds of soils there that some are marine influence, some have darker soils. But the red wine overall is Cabernet Franc. Although there's some Malbec and Gamay and even Pinot Noir now grown in the Loire Valley readily, you have to understand, pre-warming of the planet, it was hard to make red wine because it's such a marginal growing area. It was. So typically, most red wines would look like slightly darker rosés. So to have a red wine that's this dark, back in those days was Charles Joguet specifically, and now more so than ever. And wow, I didn't know we got this wine, but this is Chêne Vert. This is, to me, his finest wine.
Wow. And it's Cabernet Franc?
Yep. This wine is an ancient historic vineyard that's very famous. It's got this oak tree, or had an oak tree in the middle of it. That's why it's called Chêne Vert. And this is like the gun from Joguet.
Oh. Is it in Loire Valley? Is it frowned upon to cut down oak trees in vineyards too?
Well, I'm sure. But this oak tree was very historic. And this guy leveraged everything he had, because he didn't have a lot of money, to buy this parcel this historic parcel when it came up for sale.
Oh, that's cool.
So I thought we were buying a different wine. So you must have spent a pretty penny for this wine, because this wine is that's a gun. That is a gun wine right there. Chêne Vert, Chinon.
Well, you guys will see us open it up next week.
Yep. Okay.
What makes it a gun, real quick?
It's just got so much innate complexity. It's not only dark and it's got some oomph to it, but it's got complexity. It's got pedigree, and it's got it's got soul. It's something else. It's a whole nother degree. You see a lot of red wines being made in the Loire Valley, and they are more about deliciousness and quaffing and enjoyment today and whatever. This one is something that you can age. It's something you can drink it young, or you can drink it aged.
Should we not open it next week?
Well, you have to experience it. But this is the benchmark to measure all the others. Maybe I'll bring another Cabernet Franc, maybe from Anjou.
Well, let's just try. We're already putting it out there that we're going to try it. Unless you don't think we should.
No, I think it's great.
Let's just try it.
Okay.
We got it. We're virtually sharing it with everybody.
So we bought this one also at
Arfield
Kailua. Yeah? And again, we're not endorsing any single store. But at the same time, those stores, when we find these kind of wines, I think we want to alert you just so that you will.
And for people that are listening to this that don't live on Oahu or don't even live in Hawaii, what are their options? How do they go about finding wines like this?
Just go online. Everything's available online now.
Okay. So for you guys that don't live here, again, we'll put the name of the wine in the description, and you can try to find it out. Or you can ask us questions too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the final wine is the westernmost of the four main subregions, the Nantes. And the specific grape that it's famous for is called Muscadet. Yeah. So because it's so close to the Atlantic Ocean, it's all kinds of soils. And so typically the image I always have... It used to be for sure, but now I'm not sure. Things have changed so much. So they're growing Pinot Noir in this area now, which is crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, Muscadet, when I was growing up in this industry, was the wine that was regularly served with fresh raw oysters. This was the definitive pairing. Everybody else from other regions say, no, you got to try our wine with it. But definitively, when you go to the bistros and whatnot in Paris, it was always fresh Muscadet. Muscadet was meant to be consumed young, fresh, vibrant, exuberant. It didn't have a lot of complexity to it. It wasn't meant to, intentionally. It was just meant to be just wine that you eat the oyster, you just gulp it down with Muscadet, because Muscadet had acidity that act like a squeeze of lemon. And it was very minerally because of the marine influenced soil. So it was very briny because it's salinity, because it's so close to the ocean. So it just went.
So very classic.
It's very classic. The challenge was always finding Muscadet that was fresh.
Here in Hawaii.
Given that we live in Hawaii, given the travel time, and back then, non-temperature control, you couldn't get fresh Muscadet. And so there's a couple of producers that I absolutely adore.
This being one of them.
Yes, and it took us so long to get this. This is Louis Meteireau. This is a classic Muscadet to me. Classic. And I think it's something that will show you what Muscadet is capable of. Don't expect the gloriousness or the nobility of Vouvray or Sancerre or Chinon. It's not meant to be that kind of wine. It's meant to be a wine that's served at cafe or bistros, simply with raw oysters or fresh seafood.
This might be the hardest one for them to find.
Yes.
This is more seasonal, that's why, right?
Yes. So where did we buy this at?
So we actually featured this in one of our wine posses. That's how we had this specific bottle and vintage here. Oh. But I know when it was in our posse, it was also at our field Kailua.
Okay, got it. So that's our Loire Valley lineup. I mean, we could do all kinds of wines, but to keep it simple and general, because we're not talking about master sommelier or any type of high-end examinations studying. We're talking about just being more familiar with what's available to
and
you.
Exploring the world of wine region to region. I think that's cool. I think that's something people can follow along with.
So you can just easily go online and look up wine map of Loire Valley, and you'll see a picture of the Loire Valley. You'll see where it's situated in France, and then you'll see how it's broken down to 4 major subregions. Again, Central Vineyards, Touraine, Anjou, and then Nantes. Mm-hmm. And then you take a picture of these 4 wines and you try it with us on our next podcast so that you can experience the wines firsthand if you want.
Yeah. Well, and then as far as like getting information, we'll recap this Loire Valley region next week. And then on the second half of the episode, I think we should introduce the next region that we'll be doing, but we'll do that next week.
Okay, because we already have the wines.
We already have the wines.
Okay,
and we're already ready to go. So I'll go and look up the regions, grape varietals, or 5 appellations, grape varietals, and producers next.
Okay, sounds good. We have a plan.
And then we'll taste wine next week as well.
Okay, sounds good. I think this will be fun. I think this will be a good learning opportunity for you.
I think so too. And I think for everybody else too. Instead of just drinking wines that you're familiar with, let's taste the world of wines together in a non-threatening environment, because I know nothing. So I think that's kind of what we set out to do, and we're going to get back on this path.
Okay. Sounds good.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thanks.
Next week. Ooh, I'm having a thrilling time. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody. That was a really bad ending, but we will be back next week.
Aloha, everybody. I'm just playing around. I want to make wine fun.
Yeah. Thank you.